In life, you have but two choices. You can either eat sandwiches or die. Behold, this is what's on the menu. Sandwich build blueprints, delicious analysis, and of course, actual sandwiches. Pretty tasty, right? I want to make 3 8-hour-long videos about how to build better sandwiches using video game Buildcraft logic and culinary arts, for a total of 24 hours of delicious sandwich Buildcraft. And I need 2 things from you to make that happen. Thoughts about sandwiches, and of course, your own recipes that you'd like to see rendered in glorious Technicolor, and money to bring those sandwiches into reality in my mouth, and hopefully in yours too. I and my graphic designer friend Carolyn, who's working with me on this project, she made the logo you see before you, and also those blueprint style graphics I'll talk about more later, are seeking $1,000 total to fund this project. If you're watching this video on YouTube, the Kickstarter is linked in the video description. Let me run you through the menu of our offerings. If you choose to back this project, I'll follow up with you in a day or two by messaging you on Kickstarter with details and the forms where you can submit your ideas for sandwiches as laid out in the specific reward tiers, and also your sandwich if you buy the $50 tier. For $5, you'll be helping bring this project into reality. I'll thank you by name at the end of the video series, and of course I'd be happy to read out a little 1 or 2 line message that you have. That's included in the submission form when you purchase this tier. And you can also submit names for a lot of other stuff, like all of the sandwiches on the menu, which you'll get to preview and submit a name for using another form that I'll provide if you get this tier. And of course, I also have a few other things I'd like to ask you about, like what you even would like to define a sandwich as. I'm much more interested in what you think about that than I. So at the beginning of the video, of the first video, when I talk about what we're going to go with as a working definition of a sandwich, I will be reading through all the submissions from people at the $5 and other tiers to sort of get some ideas on the table about what we should even consider a sandwich to be. And so for this $5 tier, you are supporting the project, of course in name, but also ideologically by providing your own sandwich buildcrafting thoughts for me to extrapolate on. For $9, you can get your very own limited edition Sandwich Buildcraft Parlay. That's right. The system that I use on my second channel for years is now coming to the main channel, Sandwich Buildcraft. You can include your own topic about sandwiches, and I'll discuss it during WichCraft. I'll find a way to fit it into the very, very long list of topics in the series, and then I'll cover it at that time. Of course, if you don't want to watch the whole series, I'll also provide you with a timestamp, so you know where to find it if you don't want to, or you're not sure if you want to, watch the entire 24-hour sandwich affair. So basically, I'll answer whatever question you have about sandwiches in significant detail. You can check out my second channel, which I've linked in the Kickstarter, for examples of that. Now we've arrived at the spicy stuff. For $50, we will render your sandwich as a blueprint-style recipe graphic. This is going to be drawn by our graphic designer for this project, my friend Carolyn. She's a very experienced graphic designer and has been working with me to develop this particular style of blueprinty, kind of sketching on some notes about the sandwich graphic, which will of course include my own Buildcraft notes about what each ingredient is doing and exactly how to prepare them and how to order them. Order being one of the most important aspects of Buildcrafting a sandwich. And then of course I'll build that sandwich in real life and eat it and record myself reviewing it and give my own take on it, if applicable. And that's kind of a main building block of the series. We'll talk a little bit more about how the series is organized in a minute, but generally every hour or so we're going to do one of these reviews, and that will be the sort of bouncing off point for that hour's topics. So these sandwiches are a major building block of this project. Basically, if you don't commission them yourselves, but the project gets funded, I'm just going to have to make up my own, so I would really rather talk about yours. Finally, for $90, you can take over an entire hour of WichCraft structure for your own sandwich buildcrafting designs. That's right, if there's a topic that you don't think I'm going to cover, you can get this $90 tier. I'll give you access to the entire show notes for all of the 24 hours of WichCraft, and then you can modify an hour's topic. You can either add one from the many topics that I cut from the show notes, or you can make your own. And of course, we'll talk about it to make sure it fits the series, but I'm going to be pretty adaptable. Just like with the $50 tier, you can pick from a wide variety of things. I mean, you already saw one of those 2 sandwiches I previewed before. Not so sure that's a sandwich, but whatever, not up to me. That's my philosophy here. As long as it's on topic and you're not going to be disingenuous about it, as long as it's basically related to sandwiches, you're good to go. Just to give you a quick example of something that I would consider related enough to sandwiches for the topic, but which I'm not planning to cover, you could request that I do an hour about drink pairings for sandwiches. That sounds interesting. That's totally related to sandwiches. I think that's fine. Very on topic about sandwich buildcraft, very buildcrafty, discussing drinks of any kind, tea, alcohol, whatever you like. And I'd be happy to talk about that for an hour, but I'm not going to unless somebody gets the steer. I simply don't think it's the most important of the topics that I have in mind. But would it be interesting? Sure. And if you would rather have that be part of the series, you can make that happen. So some brief discussion about production schedule. This is going to fund for most of February. Then we're going to make it during March, and then it will come out on April 1st. Well, there are 3 8-hour videos, so there isn't much reason to put them all out on April 1st, because it will be physically impossible to watch all of them by the end of April 1st. So I'm going to space them out just a few days. The first one will be April 1st, and then the other 2 will be within a week or so, just simply for the sake of spacing out uploads on my YouTube channel. This will be on my public main YouTube channel, but I'm not going to put ads on them. You've already paid for this series, so there's no need for that. If you want to watch this on mobile, which being that it's 24 hours, I gather a lot of people will want to, then you don't have to worry about ads at all. I won't put any on any part of the series, and I will make sure that there are not any inhibiting it. If YouTube completely changes before this series goes up, I will upload it to a private server so you can watch it ad-free. You paid for it already, so my commitment is that it's not going to have ads. So that's when it will be delivered. There will be a few little things that probably won't be done by the beginning of April. One thing that we're going to do is if I significantly change a sandwich build that is submitted at the $50 tier, we'll give you an image of your build as a blueprint style graphic and my build. So if you want to have both, or if you'd rather have only one, we'll give you that option. And of course, some of those we might need to wait until after WichCraft is complete for me to have all the ideas I'm going to have about how to change up the sandwiches. And so I'll give a sort of final draft with my stamp of approval. And if you want that version as well, then you are more than welcome to it. So of course that might take a little bit after the beginning of April, but it should not too much long after that. So that's the production schedule. Is pretty simple. Finally, funding. Now you might be convinced by all of this and say, all right, I'm ready to sign up, but I would like to know what you're going to do with my money. Very fair. Let's talk about that. So first of all, we're going to buy ingredients. I mean, we're making a bunch of different sandwiches. We're not just making the sandwiches that are submitted at the $50 tier, although that will be a lot of them. There are also a lot of sandwiches that I make or am going to make that are going to be part of the series for demonstration purposes, or because I like them and I want to talk about them and it's my series. And so we need money to pay for those ingredients. Now, of course, we get to eat those sandwiches, so it's not entirely necessary to front the entire cost. But for a counterexample, if we're going to make one reward tier on Kickstarter, because that's how Kickstarter works, that lets you get this one reward, then to allow people to pick any ingredient they want, it has to be at a reasonable value, because let's say somebody commissions a lobster roll. Yeah, with good ingredients, that might actually cost $50. So there are, to give that flexibility, and I'm sure there will be sandwiches like that, they will run the gamut of expense, and I plan to spare very little expense when making them. I'm not going to make some basic version. I'm going to try to make something really good, and then if there's a way to make an interesting, meaningfully tasty version cheaper, I'll think about that too. This is not going to be just getting the most basic versions of the ingredients. To be honest with you, I don't want to eat that. We're going to get some gourmet sandwich buildcraft in here. So that's one point of cost. Another point is getting Carolyn paid for her graphic design work. Of course, I'm the proprietor of the project, and so I'm fronting the sort of risk of organizing it, and it's for her to simply be paid for the good work she's doing. And so she'll be paid not only a flat amount for being involved, but also a cut of whatever the project earns. So if it gets overfunded, she's going to get some of that money as well. I just think that's the most fair, reasonable way to do it. This is a friend of mine, and so it's important to treat her as properly and decently as possible about it. A few other pieces of equipment. Toasters. That's right. You can't just have a sandwich buildcraft thing without talking about toasting bread. And of course, while I could review ovens, I'm not going to. I will talk about ovens, but I am going to talk about toasters and burners. I have a few toasters lined up beyond the one I just own that we're going to acquire. If they're terrible, then I'll return them and get something else interesting. But once we have a nice gradient of a few different options, I'll review them and talk about the pros and cons. And if you like certain kinds of sandwiches, maybe you want this one. And that part, that was actually one of the first parts I wrote in this project. That's pretty thoroughly planned out. But another facet of toasting bread is an induction cooktop so that you can toast one side of a piece of bread in a fat of your choice, maybe butter, olive oil, some such. and know the exact temperature at which you might want to toast that bread. That's right. Because it's an induction cooktop, there's no reason we can't simply tell you the exact Fahrenheit and Celsius temperatures that you might want to toast that bread in that fat for that length of time at. And so you'll get a very scientific review of that particular kind of toasting. I even have a special flat cast iron pan with no lip that I'll be using with that induction cooktop should the project get funded and I acquire it. So those are a few examples of things. And finally, decor. Not just decor, but making the video sound and look good. You might notice this room it's a little plain, you know. This is just my office. It's not exactly decorated too much. I'll be getting some plants, some nice cutting boards, a good tablecloth to adorn the setup, display the sandwiches, and of course, a mic I can walk around with a little bit more so that when I'm physically showing you and eating a sandwich, I don't have to be in this exact posture to talk about it. I've already experimented with a few of those, so I know what I want, and I will get that using some of the funds. So that's some of what the funds are going to be used for. The extra money is, of course, to pay for me doing the work of making the project, because this is going to require a lot of time, despite the fact that I've carefully sectioned it out, while I'm in the midst of streaming and making videos on my main and second channels at the same time that I'm making this project. So that's where the funds are going to be used. So I think that just about does it. If you have any further questions about this, please don't hesitate to contact me on Discord or Twitter. Those are both linked in the Kickstarter description. And I really thank you very much for considering this project. I'm very thankful to be able to make these sort of completely derpy, crazy out there projects by asking if you want them to exist and then making them if they get funded. So I'm looking forward to your potentially favorable replies, and I thank you very much for your consideration. Thanks for listening.